Here's the bullets hit the metal rail of the bridge. These people are anti-government protesters. They claim the shots came from the army. Al Jazeera has no way of confirming their allegations. As those on the bridge run, trying to get a safe distance away, others drag those who fell from the scene. This video has now emerged on YouTube. It's dated 28th of January when there were protests in Alexandria. As this man approaches what appears to be police, a single shot is fired. We have no way of knowing if the man survived. The Egyptian authorities say 11 people have been killed in the unrest across the country. The United Nations says it's more than 300. Alan Fisher, Al Jazeera.
Well, 2 weeks of demonstrations have been costing Egypt millions of dollars every day. We've just seen there the human cost, but there is a financial one too. The investment bank, Credit Agricole, reckons the economy's lost at least $3.4 billion, that's US dollars, since the unrest began. $310 million every day. And some bank branches reopened on Sunday. They were only allowed to open for 3.5 hours, possibly to avoid a run on the local banks. Stock market, though, is going to stay shut for the time being. The authorities have said they'll give 48 hours notice. It's going to take them a little while just to check that everything's working smoothly, as and when they do decide to do that. And the unrest has hit one of Egypt's key industries, that is tourism, with officials putting the number of visitors who fled the country at least 1 million. Well, for many small shop owners and residents of Cairo, life is yet to return to normal.
If we're stuck at home, what is there for us to do? If someone has some money saved up and he then spends it all, how can we then eat or drink? That is why it is a must for life to go back to normal.
The protesters in Tahrir Square can stay there. We want them to stay there, isolated in their own bubble. But for the rest of us, life will go on. It will not stop, because it must go on.
A very large portion of the changes the anti-government protesters wanted have already been met. The government began to feel sympathetic towards them and asked them what they wanted. But now what? I'm sure that if Mubarak leaves today, they still will not go home, because there are groups within them that want us to become like Tunisia or Iraq.
Well, let's run you through some of the main points. Egypt's outlawed opposition party, that is the Muslim Brotherhood, has had a meeting with the vice president, and its representatives have told Al Jazeera the group still doesn't trust the government to bring in any reforms that have been promised. These pictures obtained by Al Jazeera showing protesters being gunned down in Cairo. One man on the ground being taken away, and then suddenly more shots and others fall. And on the Thai-Cambodian border, there's been another exchange of fire between Thai forces and Cambodian troops. There had been a ceasefire after a Thai soldier was killed on Saturday. 3 others and a civilian had died on Friday. Cambodian and Thai forces exchanged gunfire near a contested 900-year-old temple. So let's get the very latest on that from our correspondent Wayne Hay, who is on the Thai side of the border. Actually, these are pictures of Tahrir Square. Yeah, Wayne Hay is there. He's on the Thai-Cambodian border. Tell us what happened, if you would, Wayne.
Well, just literally a few seconds ago, again, we heard more artillery shells, saw the lights streaming across the sky. These are artillery shells that are going from the Thai side towards the Cambodian side. This latest flare-up started on Friday, as you mentioned, and we thought there had been some sort of ceasefire agreement reached between the two governments. That seems to have been thrown out the door on Sunday evening. About 3 hours ago, this fighting started. A Thai army source told us that it started when they saw a flare being launched from the Cambodian side, and they feared that an attack could be coming after that. As we see some more artillery now, you may be able to hear the explosions in the background. So they feared an attack was coming from the Cambodian side. So they started firing towards the Cambodians, and since then we have seen dozens and dozens of artillery shells going towards the Cambodian side. We are hearing unconfirmed reports of 1 Thai soldier injured. and certainly no reports at this stage of artillery shells coming back from the Cambodians. Certainly from where we're standing, right beside one of those Thai artillery positions, we're seeing no evidence of those shells coming back from Cambodia.
The reason the troops are there is because of this dispute over the temple in whose territory it falls. Tell us exactly where it is in relation to where the fighting is, and remind us about the reasons behind the argument about it.
Well, the fighting really is taking place right around that disputed area where the temple is located. The situation where we are now, the position where we are right beside this artillery position on the Thai side, is about 20 kilometres from the temple itself. The temple itself was awarded to Cambodia by an international court back in 1962, but the area that's really in dispute is about 4 square kilometres around the temple itself. That is the area that these two nations come to blows over. More artillery now being fired across the border. And we've seen these flare-ups over the last few years, but this one is certainly a lot more intense. Usually the flare-ups involve very close quarters, gunfire, and that certainly was the case when it first started on Friday. But now with the use of artillery shells from both sides, it's certainly taking it to another level.
Thanks, Wayne. That's Wayne Hay. In Iran, 3 US citizens have gone on trial charged with spying. The hearing is behind closed doors. The families of the 3 say that they were hiking in northern Iraq when they were arrested 19 months ago. One of the 3, the female in the group, was released on bail because of health concerns last year and is being tried in her absence. Heavy rains hampering flood rescue efforts in Sri Lanka. At least 14 people have been killed and hundreds of thousands of homes have been flooded. As Minel Fernandez reports from Colombo, the National Disaster Management Centre is finding it very difficult to cope.
The waters raged once again, sweeping everything in their path. Worst hit was the north-central province. Swollen irrigation tanks breaching their banks. One reported to have unleashed around 55,000 cubic acres of water. Many villagers were cut off by the floodwater, boats their only hope. Over 1 million people have been affected, and more than 230,000 have been forced to leave their homes for temporary shelters. In the Central Highlands, authorities issued a landslide alert and declared a state of emergency in some areas.
Our kitchen was buried by a landslide at the back of the house.
It wasn't just people facing hardships. This baby elephant was among the wildlife caught by rising waters. The military and police are helping with the rescue and relief efforts. But despite the devastation, there were some moments of hope. This baby born on a helicopter as her mother was flown to safety. In Colombo, charities are trying to gather food and clothing to send to victims. But they face a major problem delivering this aid, as many roads are impassable. Emergency supplies and food stocks are being loaded up behind me to be taken to the hundreds of thousands of people affected by this latest round of flooding. But it'll take a whole lot more for those affected by this latest disaster to get on their feet again. Minel Fernandez, Al Jazeera, Colombo.
I want to tell you now about something rather personal to us coming out of Egypt. One of Al Jazeera's correspondents, that is Ayman Mohyeddin, has been detained by the Egyptian army near Tahrir Square in Cairo. You'll recognise his face if you're a regular viewer. And Al Jazeera, we want him released immediately. This is a statement from the higher-ups here at Al Jazeera. Whoever is holding Ayman Mohyeddin, let him go as soon as possible. Let's talk to Heather Blake, who's from Reporters Without Borders. Heather, I mean, clearly we're very worried about what's happened to Ayman, but he's not the first person from our company to have been taken away, and certainly not the first person among all of the reporters there who's encountered some trouble. We will go to Heather Blake a little bit later on, but as we take a look at the pictures of Ayman Mohyeddin there, he has been detained by the Egyptian army. We're appealing for his immediate release. And anybody who knows where he is, let us know. Now, Ayman is a veteran of a number of conflicts. Did some great reporting during the Gaza war a couple of years ago and is now based full-time in Cairo. I've done a lot of reporting on what's been happening over the course of the last 13 days in and around Tahrir Square. And I was just buying some time there as we look at pictures of Ayman because the people in our sound department were dialing the number of Heather Blake